Jay Skurski with the Buffalo News covers the Bills, joining us now on Foxborough Rush. And Jay, I know that's a voice familiar to you, hearing Sean McDermott talk about a former member of the Bills in Steph Diggs, who now is, trying to shed some light to these young Patriots as to what it's like to walk in and play in Buffalo and all the noise and the crowd and the prime time and all those things. What's sort of the sentiment in Buffalo going into this game Sunday night?
I think, well, it's interesting. First of all, they're doing a whiteout game. They're doing a kind of a cold front game when the temperature is going to be 80 degrees on Sunday. So they mistimed that one just a little bit. But no, I think it'll be a cool atmosphere. I know that the players are excited about these new jerseys. We were kind of talking a little bit before we went live here. The primetime games are nothing new for the Bills. This is their third one out of 4 home games at this point in the season. So the atmosphere, Stephon Diggs knows it well, right? He was a big part of it. And so, yeah, I'm sure his teammates, his younger teammates, will be leaning on him a little bit to kind of wonder, what exactly they are going to be walking into in Orchard Park. But I do think, in terms of, the divisional matchup, there's more at stake here for the Patriots than there is for the Bills. That's just the reality of it. But this is a game that I think the Bills can really put a chokehold on the division race really early in the season if they're able to win it. And so there is that to play for the Bills. I mean, it's two franchises at two different points. The Bills right now, their number one goal is the number one seed in the AFC. And to get that, they need to keep winning. It's in front of them. There's a clear path to it. So in that aspect, every game is important.
In a game, Jay, where, like you said, it's kind of old hat for the Bills. They've been here before. The environment is what it is. They're going to introduce the new jerseys, and Nike's going to fatten their pockets. But it's going to be exciting for the fan base, obviously. Coming in, obviously, Stephon Diggs' perspective, but just from thinking back to a few years ago when the Bills were a young team and they had a young quarterback, and maybe they were entering a different atmosphere at a different point, early in the season, it's going to kind of be a culture shock. How would you expect that to impact not only the Patriots, but maybe the Bills, and knowing that this team that they're playing this week is going to try to play up to a different level than they have this season?
Well, I mean, I think if you're Mike Vrabel, right, you are using this game as a measuring stick for where New England is in his first season, right? I mean, there's a lot to prove for the Patriots here. They can really make a statement that, I don't know that they're going to be a serious challenger for the division, but if they win this game, they're a game behind Buffalo with the head-to-head tiebreaker. And so I think what it would do, though, for sure, is establish New England as a bona fide playoff contender if they were able to come into Buffalo and get a win. And so, yeah, they are a younger team, certainly, with a lot of new pieces that they're still working into the lineup in terms of, their free agent additions and everything. And Drake Maye is a young quarterback, but I was really impressed with what he did here in the game last year in Orchard Park that the Bills were huge favorites in and barely won. And so I think New England has played the Bills pretty tough and has reason to have some confidence coming into this game.
What do you think New England would have to do and do really well in order, for this to be close at the end with them to have a chance to walk out with the win?
They can't turn it over. The Bills feast on turnovers.
We know that.
26 games in a row, the Bills have not lost the turnover battle. It's an NFL record. It's remarkable. So, in the evolution of Josh Allen, probably the most impressive piece of it has been, he comes into this league as this kind of unbridled, kind of wild quarterback who's going to make the splash play, but then is also going to make the head-scratching turnover at times. Well, he has eliminated that from his game entirely. The Bills simply don't beat themselves. And so, when you look at New England, I know their running backs have had some issues with fumbling. Like if they're going to have any chance in this game, they can't do that. They have to play a very clean game. And I think if they do that, that will allow them to hang in there, because the Bills' offense is not this, we're going to get the ball and we're going to score in 2 minutes. It's, they go through the ground right now with James Cook. And so the Bills will have some longer drives and some longer possessions. Doing that, of course, you're not going to necessarily run away from a team. But if New England turns the ball over, especially in their own end, or if they don't end drives, with touchdowns, if they settle for field goals, that's not a way to keep up with Josh Allen.
Yeah.
You talked about Josh Allen kind of being little turnover happy early in his career. We've seen a little bit of that out of Drake Maye. It's come way down, obviously, in the early part of this season. But I wonder, kind of going back to who Josh Allen was, let's say, in the first 2 years of his career, compared to who Drake Maye has shown himself to be in the first 2 years of his career. Are there any, comparisons that you see? And maybe are there things that they do differently that do separate them? Because they get compared to each other a lot. I don't necessarily know if that's fair to either at this point.
That's lofty. I mean, I think it's a disservice to Drake Maye, right? Let him be his own quarterback. Let him be.
Yeah,
I think it happens to. I think it happens to a lot of these quarterbacks that come into the league because Allen was maybe the most polarizing prospect in the draft in the last decade, right? There were people that loved him, that thought he should be the number one overall pick, and then people that thought he wasn't a first-round talent because of his college stats. And, his development is remarkable in a lot of different ways. And so to put that pressure on Drake Maye, I don't think is fair. I understand the arm talent is there, and I understand the mobility. That's maybe the area of Allen's game that he didn't get nearly enough credit for. And we saw him rely on that a lot early in his career, was that ability when there wasn't anything there to scramble and make plays with his legs. I don't know that Drake, I don't have his rushing stats in front of me. I don't know that he's done that to the level that Allen did, but I know it's a part of his game. So I would just tell anyone, who's watching Drake Maye and who's in his second season to just cool it on the comparisons, right? Let the guy be his own quarterback. Let him come into his own. Asking him to become the next Josh Allen isn't fair to him because that we've not seen a growth in a quarterback in a long time like Allen, right? From where he was as a prospect to the league MVP. And that's asking very, very much. And I would say that of any young quarterback, not just Drake Maye.
Yeah, I think it's so hard, right? I mean, this is a league and this is a world in which everybody is so quick to be like, okay, give me the comp. Like, who am I looking at? Interception in this one, but the rushing yards, to your point, you were just saying, I'm not exactly sure where Drake Maye comes in, Jay, and you can see obviously Josh Allen, trumps him there, and one more rushing touchdown. But again, these are two quarterbacks that are in very different stages of development. And you talked about this a little bit before, but the way in which we have seen Josh Allen learn to take care of the football, I think, and also the biggest growth that I feel like I've seen from him, Jay, and I'm curious for your thought on this, is that he doesn't go out there and feel like he constantly has to carry this team on his back. It used to feel like he felt like he always had to play hero ball. And that is certainly not what we've seen from him. And he still has the ability to do it. I don't think anybody doubts that. But I think it has made this Buffalo team more well-rounded, that he doesn't sort of go out with that mission the same way he maybe did when he was just a little bit younger.
You're spot on. I agree 100%. I mean, you look at, week one, the fourth quarter against the Ravens, he throws for 250 yards in the fourth quarter alone. So he can do it, right? I mean, make no mistake. He's the MVP for a reason. But, Allen has got the best offensive line that he's had in his 8 years in Buffalo in front of him right now. He's got a running back in James Cook, who I think is playing, if not the best in the NFL at his position, he's certainly in the conversation in the top 2 or 3. And so this is a Bills offense that says we can beat you any way you want. If you want to, stack the box and try to stop James Cook in the running game, well, okay, then take your chances with Josh Allen throwing it. If you want, we're going to cover and we're not going to let Josh Allen beat us, okay, well, then we're just going to run it, and we're going to run it again, and we're going to run it again. And so I think that's what makes this offense so incredibly difficult to not only defend, but also to predict how they're going to attack you, because they don't have a number one receiver. Stephon Diggs is no longer here, right? In any given week, it could be Dalton Kincaid. It can be Khalil Shakir. It can be Keon Coleman, who we saw in week one have a really big game. So they're very difficult to defend in that way. But to your original point about Allen and the hero ball, and that was a phrase that was used so often here in Buffalo, It's basically gone from his game. rears its head once in a while. There'll be a time or two where he gets a little frustrated, and you see him try to, maybe put a ball in a spot that he shouldn't do it. Any quarterback's going to do that, though, right? But yeah, for the most part, he has pretty much eliminated that entirely from his game. It's a sign of, I believe, remarkable maturity. I think his mental game, for lack of a better phrase, is really caught up to his physical skills, and we know that those are top tier.
Jay, you mentioned Stephon Diggs. How big of a story is it, his return to Buffalo for the first time since he was traded the last April, whatever it might have been? Because it's a big story here. A lot of people are talking about it here.
It's interesting. I mean, we went around the locker room and talked to some guys about it, guys that he was teammates with and are still friends with. And as you would expect, they all had good things to say about him. The Bills did play against Diggs last year, even though that game was in Houston. So I think I think some of the reunion was kind of covered then. I do think for him personally, probably coming back into Buffalo, and I heard his interview there in New England this week. He sounded like it's going to be a kind of an emotional moment and scene for him. I mean, listen, Stephon Diggs was great when he was here for the Bills, and the circumstances surrounding his departure remain a bit murky. But I think both Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs can look at each other and say, you really helped elevate my career. I think Diggs came in and gave the Bills a number one receiver when Josh Allen probably needed that. And I think Josh Allen's development allowed Stephon Diggs to become this all-pro and to reach another level of stardom that maybe he hadn't even reached when he was in Minnesota. So I think it was a mutually beneficial relationship. I don't think that there should be much bad blood on either side. I mean, I know there'll be some boos because that's just what people do when players come back. But Diggs has been pretty complimentary about his time in Buffalo and with the Bills. And I think there'll be a fair amount of cheers too for him when he takes the field.
As you look at this current iteration of this Buffalo Bills team, and as you said, this is probably their best shot in the early going to be the 1 seed, right? Which is something that has been elusive to them. And maybe that's the difference maker that, all of a sudden you're playing at home in an AFC championship and you don't have to be on the road. And that's, that allows you to get over that hurdle and, go play for a Lombardi trophy, which we all know, like, that is the goal for this Bills team. And it has been for a couple of years now. But what would you say, having seen them through these 4 games, is their greatest weakness?
Well, if we're talking just generally, it's defense, right? They have a lot of questions defensively still. They have a lot of new parts defensively. They're dealing with injuries on that side of the ball. They've got 2 players who are serving 6-game suspensions here at the start of the year, who are still 2 weeks away from coming back, and who are new pieces. And so we don't know exactly how they're going to work into the lineup. They've got a young player in Cole Bishop at safety. They've got Joey Bosa, who was gotten off to a nice start here through the first 4 weeks, but in a lot of ways, they're still finding out who they are defensively and how they're going to come together. They've had issues on third down here early in the season, getting off the field. Their run defense, you can just look at the Bears stats, are not pretty. They're 31st in the league defending the run at this point. So, and that's been the case in the playoffs, right? The reason that this team has lost in the playoffs the past few years, however many really that you want to go back in losing, has mostly been the defense. And so, and for Sean McDermott, a defensive-minded head coach, he knows that, right? And that sticks with him. And so it's on him, honestly, to get this defense playing the best that it can. But that doesn't have to happen on October 5th. That has to happen in December and January for this team. So there's a bit of a long runway here, but that's going to be the challenge, is getting that defense ready for playoff football.
How do you see this one shaking out Sunday night?
Exactly. You got it.
Yeah. I'm taking the Bills in a close one. Listen, they haven't lost 14 games in a row at home in the regular season. They've scored at least 24 points in those games. They're a really, really tough out in Orchard Park. If they win on Sunday night, it'll tie a franchise record. And, the Bills had 4 years in a row of Super Bowls. So, they can tie a franchise record for consecutive home wins in the regular season. That being said, I expect the Patriots to come in here and give them a spirited game. I know the spread's like 7.5. I'm going to take New England with the points, but I will take the Bills to win it outright in maybe a 3 or 4 point game.
All right, Jay Skurski with the Buffalo News. Thanks for hanging with us on Foxborough Rush. We appreciate the time.
Anytime. Thank you for having me. Yep.
All right, much more Foxborough Rush coming your way. Stick around. We're back right after this.